All right, guys, today we're going to talk about leadership, and we've got a great panel. I'm going to bring him out. David B. Smith. David is currently the managing director of the Presidio Institute. Come on out. And then Joanne Tan. Joanne is the director and lead architect, I love that title, of Plus Acumen, Acumen's global learning community for social change makers. So let's have a seat. So first, I think we want to talk a little bit about what each of your organizations do, what you guys do. So tell us a little bit about Presidio Institute.
Absolutely. So the Presidio Institute is focused on investing in cross-sector leaders. And basically, we do leadership development that brings people together from business, nonprofit, government, academia, philanthropy to solve major public challenges, understanding that you need to do it in a much more cross-sector interconnected way than in the past.
Okay. And Joanne, talk a little bit about what you guys do.
Sure. So Plus Acumen is the World School for Social Change. We believe that anyone can create meaningful change within their communities. And given the complexity of the world's challenges today, we need everyone. And so what we try to do is we go out there and we find the best lessons, the insights and inspiration to creating social change, and then democratize access to them by offering them as free or low-cost online courses. And we've had about 250,000 people from 170 countries take them.
Wow. I think the idea of leadership is so interesting because it traditionally has been a leader or someone who rises to a certain level in their company or reaches some sort of goal. But really, the idea of leadership, what you're saying is it's really a person. It can be anyone. Can you talk a little bit about what we were discussing backstage a bit?
Yeah, so our definition of leadership is it's really much more of an action than it is a position.
Right.
And we actually define leadership as change at the pace that people can stand. So it is much more about how do you actually change things within your community. And from a cross-sector lens, and this is really something that is being driven a lot more from the millennial generation as well, is that you actually need to lead in places where you don't have formal authority, where you actually are in collaboratives or coalitions or in those types of positions. And so it is less about your position and your title and much more about how you show up, how people interact with you, and what you're able to achieve.
And so you guys offer courses and different ways to build those skills. And
yes, absolutely. So we have leadership development courses, some that are in person and then some that are online. So we have our flagship program is called the Presidio Institute Fellows, and it's a 9-month experience with mid-career executives who are from business, nonprofit, government, academia, philanthropy. They come together and they basically take a live challenge they're working on in their community, and they spend 3 weeks together, a week in San Francisco, a week in DC, a week in New York. We also have 3-day programs where you can come out to the Presidio, overlook the beautiful Golden Gate Bridge, get out of the Beltway, get out of your community, and actually have the time to reflect and engage in that way. But from the very beginning, we knew that these 3-day boot camps or 1-day innovation intensives would only get us so far in actually achieving the mission. And so we, from the very beginning, wanted to make sure that we were creating an online presence. And so Leaderosity at leaderosity.com is really one of the core strategies that we have to be able to take this type of program, our cross-sector leadership, and move it online to increase the number of people, decrease the cost, and really democratize the content. And Leaderosity is also a place where other people can put their platform, or put their content. And so one of our partners, the Nonprofit Leadership Alliance, has a lot of content focused on the skills to being a more effective cross-sector or a more effective nonprofit leader on the platform as well.
So leaders everywhere. We're going to build a world.
A world of cross-sector leaders. I mean, a world of millennial leaders who are changing the way that we actually solve problems.
I love that idea. Joanne, I was thinking about most leaders sometimes fail. They have to fail to succeed. And I know that Silicon Valley has its own special definition of that, right? Is that
yes, it does. So, I mean, I think I just wanted to echo a lot of what David talked about, where leadership is really an act. And I think at Acumen, we see it as a practice. And through our online courses, what we hope to encourage people to do is to constantly take action. That might push them a little bit outside of their comfort zones, but to get them to experiment with new things. And when you experiment with new things, built into that is this idea that you might fail. And how do we get people comfortable with that idea that you might fail? Well, the thing that we've learned is to get them to actually fail and experience it as not the end of the world, but really the next step in their journey toward learning. So some of the courses that we do offer are really to think about not just within the social sector, but beyond the social sector, who are the pioneers and the leaders in thinking about failure. And we've seen some of that happen really well in Silicon Valley, where there are a ton of entrepreneurs out there trying to find the next new business idea and innovation. And they're out there talking to customers, experimenting with their business models. And one of the processes and thinking frameworks that have come out of Silicon Valley is really this lean startup movement. So what we've tried to do is figure out which pieces of that lean startup movement are most applicable to people tackling social problems. And one of the courses that we do offer, for example, is on lean startup for social change, where if you do have a new idea, let's figure out how you fail fast. You don't want to invest millions of dollars or a lot of your time and energy in an idea that doesn't work. So what are the key elements that you really have to get in place to test with the real world and figure out where you might need to shift your idea or whether you ditch it entirely? And that's part of failing and learning, and hopefully as a sector, and I think as a world, we just get better at doing that.
Can you guys come here to Washington and teach us how to fail fast? I know sometimes takes us a while. No, but I just the whole concept. You know, I love the idea of getting outside of the Beltway and discussing this in a broader sense. How do you break down those old paradigms and ways of communicating in order to sort of bring out those qualities? Is there a secret sauce for that, or is there?
I think there are lots of people all over the place who are doing really interesting work to try and shift culture within their communities, within their larger organizations. So one of the most exciting projects that we're working on right now is with the US Department of Labor. And they're using one of our free courses on human-centered design to run a challenge that helps to influence how workforce agencies across the US who work with the unemployed or the underemployed think about how they might build in innovation and human-centered design into their work processes. And so there are about 300 people, I think, taking the course across the US, and they're learning to apply human-centered design to their own organizations and challenges that they're facing. And part of that is, how do you actually get out of the building and start to engage with the people that you're serving in new ways? If you are running a program for disadvantaged youth, have you ever brought them into your strategy design process, into your program design process to actually hear about what it is that they think? And are you engaging with people within your organization at many different levels? We heard a great story about one team that brought in their security guard to take part in this course, and because he sees everybody who comes into the building, he noticed that the kids coming to their programs didn't have any place to store their backpacks. So a very simple solution they came up with was to just fill a wall with lockers so that kids had a safe place to store their stuff and they could feel comfortable interacting with the program. So it's been an interesting way in which they're trying to really disseminate this new approach across the nation, really, and hopefully we get to work with them on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
Can I build on, on this piece around, I mean, failure looks different in different environments and is welcomed differently in different environments. So yes, there's a fail fest in Silicon Valley, and it's like a badge of pride of somebody who has, started a bit, had a big startup and then just completely fell on their face. Well, as Joanna was just describing, it actually is newer for government and certainly the social sector, for the nonprofit sector to step into this. One of the sponsors here, the Case Foundation, actually has this whole mantra of be fearless. And they're actually one of the few they were one of the first, and I'd say still few, but it's an emerging trend to actually embrace failure in nonprofits. And I was lucky enough to have an investment early in my career from the Case Foundation, and it allowed me to be able to try new things in a different way. And so from a nonprofit perspective, there's always that question of how much can you share with your funder, or are they going to pull the plug if you end up failing on something? In the public sector, you may lose your job, or the entire agency may fall apart.
Sure.
And you start to see the same thing in philanthropy and in academia. One of the mantras that we actually hold in our office is we passed around. I don't know if you've seen the decline of acceptance for Albert Einstein when he applied for the University of Bern.
No.
But it actually, it shows in there. I mean, they say, we are not accepting you to our program. And we actually see this connection between time and space as much more art than physics. And so not only was it a complete slapdown of he's not getting the fellowship that he wanted and the place he wanted to study, but it was an assault on everything that we now know that he's about. And so from our perspective, we try to say, is cross-sector leadership something that is something that's so far out there that right now it may be different than what previous generations have done, but it may actually embrace really where the millennial generation and the next generation are going. And so can it be viewed as partial art and partial, ultimately, the way that we end up solving problems together in the long run.
That's great. So we have some questions. What leadership quality or skill have you noticed most people lack?
Gosh.
That's pretty, get right to the meat of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll dive into that. So the skills that we actually focus on are not necessarily
tangible, kind of like.
So they're in three major areas, right? So it's about how do you build teams, how do you solve problems, how do you achieve impact, and then within those there's more of a construct of, well, when you build teams, it's about building trust, managing power dynamics, fostering an innovation culture. When you're solving problems, about understanding the person that you're solving them for. It's about understanding the system that it's within, and it's about using data to enhance that decision making. And then achieving impact is actually all about leverage points. How do you leverage public policy? How do you leverage capital flows? How do you leverage movement building? And then ultimately, how do you align motivations of different people? Now, that's our formal methodology. To answer the question more specifically, what do people lack usually within that? I think it's actually thinking about the interconnectedness of what they're trying to solve with the people around them. So it's more of the understanding the system, that if you're trying to solve this problem, but it actually is a similar problem that 5 other people are solving in different ways, either you can work against one another, point fingers at each other, or you can change the paradigm and say, let's align our motivations and values and say, let's solve this together. And so move from pointing fingers at each other to pointing fingers to where we want to go together. And I think that this next generation is doing that much more than previous generations.
And to build on something that David also mentioned a little bit earlier, I think it's almost, you think about leadership at a rate and pace and change that people can actually manage. And one thing that we've learned is that people kind of know what they need when they're facing a certain problem or situation. It's just that they often don't know where to find the answer. And so what Plus Acumen has tried to do is just be a resource there. If you are running an organization and you're stumbling into problems with your business model or financial sustainability, we have a course there for you. If you are going through a change management process and would like to learn a bit more about adaptive leadership, we have a course there for you. And it's really framed around like, what is the problem or challenge that you're trying to solve at that point in time? And by bringing in different perspectives as well, we hope to also broaden your thinking as you continue to interact with people on the platform and with a variety of courses there. So I totally agree that systems thinking, collaborative approaches are really important. And also, how do we find a way to make whatever learning you're engaging in at a point in time most relevant to the issue or problem that you're trying to solve?
A lot of questions here about diversity in leadership, several of them as a matter of fact. Is that a course or a philosophy? I mean, is that something that you guys think about in terms of training across the board, or how do you incorporate?
Yeah, the topic of specifically diversity, equity, and inclusion is something we have found to be very core to a lot of our skills, but particularly when you're thinking about building teams or collaboratives. We talk about it from a lens of trust and power. And when you're thinking about how do you build trust between people that you're working with, and then understanding power dynamics and being able to resolve conflict, issues of diversity, equity, inclusion across a number of different lenses becomes so critical. And so it is something I would say we have not by any means cracked the nut or solved that challenge. We actually are still in a learning mode. A lot of our programs are actually learning labs that in real time we're trying to bring some of the best and the brightest, most experienced people together to be able to learn from one another.
Yeah.
And this is one of the areas that we've actually found that our cohorts go the deepest and actually are able to learn from one another as much as they learn from our faculty.
Yeah, we've tackled the diversity problem, I think, by building online courses, right? Because in that way, anyone can put up their hand and say, hey, I want to take action. And the thing that has been most thrilling for us is that you can never predict who actually is going to do a fantastic job. Right. Is it the group of retirees who used to work in travel agencies across Madagascar, all of a sudden being excited about thinking about how they solve the problems of environment in Madagascar? Or is it the two moms who are in Indiana who feel so strongly about issues around women and children that they're going to start up a new social enterprise? Or is it the young master's student in Paris who suddenly decides that education is a big deal, she wants to get back to her roots in India, and so she's actually starting an online education program using one of our Lean Startup courses. And it's so hard to predict. And so just I think what we're excited about is just the variety of people who can then come to us.
Do you find a certain skepticism of the online courses? I mean, I know that must be there must be a built-in kind of, because there's some history to that and sort of lack of seriousness maybe or fortitude of a student, but do you sense it a little bit? Is that a challenge?
Yeah, so we've been building online courses for the past 3 years, and I think we started at around the time that online learning platforms started taking off, but it's still a very nascent industry, and so everybody is asking about how effective is online teaching in comparison to in-person, and can you really train leaders online? How do you create that experience such that you know that you're training the right leaders? And what we've found is that if we make an online course challenging, it's not just about sitting in a room and consuming a video, but we create exercises and projects where students then, they watch the content online or read about it, and then go out in the real world, have discussions with real people who might have views who are different from yours, and then you will learn through that process. And if you make the work hard enough, completing the course actually means something. And only the most motivated people who really are passionate about something will do the work and get to that point.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if we can reach thousands more because of this online setting, that's a job well done for us.
Yeah, and we actually, we share in our learning management system for much of our courses, which is a group called Novo Ed, and they've actually been looking at different tools that are starting to change the way that other platforms, and particularly the folks that go through our programs, engage, which is that there's a lot more cohort connectivity. There's connection between the students themselves. This isn't just a relationship between you and your computer.
Right.
It's really a relationship between you and you, all engaged. It's just, you may work in San Francisco and you may work in New York and you may work in Knoxville, and so how do we actually connect people and then actually understand that there's parts of these different experiences that will actually enhance the training itself. And so by sharing that in that environment, in the online environment, and then connecting it to on-the-job connectivity, which I think is, I mean, real-world on-the-job connectivity is where most learning happens. And so if it ends up being an isolated environment where you can't actually apply it immediately, then we've seen it to be less effective. But our programs are ones that you can engage with a cohort online and then engage in your community right away.
And I think to the point about bringing together leaders who are better able to communicate and collaborate with each other, because of a diversity of people who come to an online platform, you actually see more opportunities for people to interact with people who are not like them. and they're learning from each other. So we actually have an online course that talks about Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. And in that discussion group, we've seen groups come together where a guy from Sweden and a guy from India met online, formed an online group to discuss the letter and how it actually applies to their own political situations in Sweden and in India. And who would ever have thought to make that connection? And for them to actually then continue on their leadership journeys together. It's been really fascinating to see. Some people have even found co-founders for their startups through this online platform. And it's about opening up the tent, really, and letting people figure out the interactions that they need to have, and also how you create these meaningful conversations and spaces in this broad setting.
How would someone get involved in one of your programs, or how would someone sort of, just enroll, or how does that work?
That's a great question. So right now for our in-person programs, you can go to our website, which is presidio.gov/institute, and that's where you can find out about our fellows program as well as our boot camp program that's coming up this fall. But that's if you can be in the San Francisco Bay Area. For anyone, and particularly those that are online right now, you can go directly to leaderosity.com, and we have a special that's running to provide an opportunity to get a scholarship to be able to be part of the next courses, the Building Teams course, the Solving Problems course, and the Achieving Impact courses. You can go and actually apply right now for a scholarship at leaderosity.com. And these are actually being sponsored by American Express and the Kresge Foundation, Annie E. Casey, so we're really excited about that.
Yeah.
Sure. So it's pretty straightforward. Plus Acumen is at plusacumen, PLUSACUMEN.org. All the courses are listed there, and they're either free or low cost, and low cost is $30 per course. So you're free to check them out. We have an exciting course that we hope to be launching in July that's on public speaking, and will feature Chris Anderson of TED talking about how you become a better public speaker. So keep an eye out for that one.
It's great. Thank you so much. I think we're just about out of time. We had tackled a lot of our questions. We know a lot more about leadership. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, David. Thanks, Ron. Thank you.